Here with you on Birds 365. Oh, the countdown's getting close. We're getting legitimately close to kickoff between the Eagles and the Giants. Their divisional matchup coming tomorrow night at the Lincoln Financial Field down in South Philly. I went with the Albany hat today because it's got a little purple in it, which matches my eyes. I like the Eagles. I'm getting more healthy by the minute. Not 100% yet, same as the Philadelphia Eagles, because J-Mac, you had this one scoped out. Avante Maddox never even made it onto the practice field. Thought that everyone else would be good to go for the game, but Avante, not happening. That's exactly the way it's played. Jalen, not on the injured list. A full participant yesterday at practice was Lane Johnson, except for Avante Maddox. The Eagles look ready to go, John.
Yeah, and a little bit of Aaron Cepas talk because Aaron thought maybe he could make it back, but I always thought that would be more likely for the championship game or the Super Bowl. So yeah, as far as being healthy at this point of the year, it's as good as you can get. You're always going to have some nicks and bruises, and again, just because you're full go doesn't mean you're 100%. I think people conflate that a little bit, and obviously Lane Johnson's not 100%, and I don't even think Jalen's 100%. But there's no doubt they're going to play. There was never any doubt they were going to play. Now it's about executing and putting everything on the table. And I think it's a good matchup. I've said it from pretty early in this process. I mean, these two teams do not match up well. Styles make bites for our old boxing people. The New York Giants do not match up well with the Eagles. They haven't for years. Now they're getting better. They're getting incrementally better, but they still don't match up well.
And I agree with your overall analysis. The Giants are improved. Anyone who doesn't say that is just either a blind Eagle loyalist or don't want to give the Giants credit for what they've achieved. But then you get the other side of it. The people who think the Giants have improved by leaps and bounds. You use the word incrementally. I like that. They've gotten better. Daniel Jones is certainly playing better than what he was because I was never a Daniel Jones fan. So I had to throw out some mea culpas his way because he certainly has improved as a quarterback. Enough to outshine a team that beat them just 6 weeks ago by 25 points? I don't think so. We're talking about 2 games. They beat the Colts pretty handily with a playoff spot on the line. They knew if they won it, they were locked into a wild card spot, and then they could do what they wanted to do against the Eagles the last week of the season. They ran the Colts off the field. And last week's upset win in Minnesota against the second worst defense in the entire National Football League. So, yes, I will give them credit for improvement, not leaps and bounds. And that's what I think it would take for the Giants to be able to beat the Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field this Saturday. And I just don't see it on paper or on the field.
Yeah. I remember, and our buddy Pat Leonard's going to be on the show in the second hour talking about that game at MetLife Stadium and how the Giants were kind of shook in the locker room. They were handled so easily by the Eagles. And, he remarked that hasn't seen that too often in the past. So, yeah, I still think there's a pretty significant difference from a personnel perspective with these two teams. And, but the Giants are getting better and they're getting better. And I think 2 years from now, we might be talking about a problem with the New York Giants if they continue going making good decisions, going in a positive direction. I think this is a tremendous foundation they're built, but I think they're not ready for this spot yet, and we'll see how it shakes out. One of the things is, and this is human nature. Everybody remembers the last thing they saw. The Eagles didn't play, and the Giants were very impressive against Minnesota. And I'll bring up Dan Orlovsky because I like Dan. Number one, I think he's really good. But he put a clip up and he's showing that Minnesota defense that we've talked about, who, by the way, fired their defensive coordinator yesterday. And I'm not a scapegoat guy. You know that, Jody, but there's not much you can do there. There's no life wrap there. That was one you had to do. and he said, the Eagles play the same concepts, which they do. They play the scheme that we've talked about so much throughout this season. And if they do that against Daniel Jones this week, they're playing right into his hands. I'm like, come on, Dan. I mean, one plays it well, one doesn't. It's not a vacuum. I'm pretty confident that the Eagles are going to be able to handle that mighty Giants offense. And we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. And by the way, if I am wrong, we're going to be here Monday morning. I'm going to rip this team to high heaven if they lose this game, because this is not a game you should even be in a discussion of losing. If you bring I'll call it your C game. Forget about your A game. If you bring your A game, you're running them out of the stadium. If you bring your C game, if you just don't bring your F game like you did against the Washington Commanders, the one loss of this season with Jalen Hurts on the field, that is the only way you lose this game, Jody. The only way.
And I might go D game. If the Giants play an A and Eagles play a D, they could find a way to lose it. I don't know if I would go quite as harsh, but you're right. If the Eagles play their A game, even if the Giants play their A game, I think it's a double-digit win. I think the Eagles will win handily, and the 7.5 is the number on the cover as of right now. And I surely think they can do that if they play their A game. But the reason that we question whether they can play their A game or not is twofold. It's two players. It's Lane Johnson and it's Jalen Hurts. Now, we won't know what condition they are in until the game starts. And we might not know a series in or even a quarter in. We get a half and we pretty well better darn know exactly how close to 100% that they are. But because both are dealing with injuries, you can't just say, I know for a fact that they're going to be able to play to the level that they played. And for Jalen Hurts, that's MVP type level. For Lane Johnson, that's Hall of Fame type level for his entire career and first team All-Pro. Do we know we're going to get that out of those two guys and their key important positional players? We don't, but we believe that that's the case. We've got indications that that's the case. The short time you guys got to watch practice any yesterday, the most important thing with Jalen Hurts is going to be when he takes off, and he will take off. Last week against the Giants, he didn't have one designated run, one called run. There will be some of those this week. But we need to see him be able to throw the football. I thought he threw it fine last week. I won't say, oh, my God, of course, he looked exactly like he looked. But he didn't look like he was favoring it at all. It didn't look like there wasn't the usual zip on the ball. I thought he looked fine throwing. He didn't throw it as often, as much as maybe you would have liked. But did you see anything at practice yesterday that gave you any indication as to how Jalen Hurts looked throwing the football?
Not yesterday, because yesterday's the typical Friday practice moved up a day. So basically all we get to watch is stretching and then we're out of there. It's a real quick environment. So I go back to Thursday, Wednesday. See, I'm already screwing up my days. And that was the big practice. And yeah, I've said from the start, the bigger concern was not the throwing, it was the contact. And that kind of borne out, and people were upset because I think it's natural with a shoulder, right? People think, well, he's going to have difficulty throwing the ball. And they threw it, whatever, 8 times in the first 10 plays. I forget what it was, but, and people were like, what are you doing? He's got a hurt shoulder. And from the beginning was pretty clear. They were keeping him away from contact. That was the bigger concern than the actual throwing of the football. So I've never been that concerned with that since he came back. The contact issue is the bigger issue for me. And that's why they took the zone read mechanics out of the offense to try to prevent that as much as possible. And you can see Jalen himself, and he admitted he was trying to protect himself a little bit from the contact part of it. And I think that's gotten better. You had the 2 week, that's where the rest really helped. And my concern is not this week, it's next week. Like if he goes there and he gets hit a couple times, it's going to pop up again. And then he's got the short span before he's got to be on the field. You're going to have the extra day, but it's not like 2 weeks. And then if you get through the championship game, you get 2 weeks again, and I think it becomes less of a concern. So I think that wheelhouse is that 1 week between the potential divisional round win and an NFC championship game. If he gets banged up in this game, that could be an issue. But you got to win this game. The championship game's not in play if you don't win this game. So even though you should win this game, even though it's a nice opponent to have at this stage, people, I always say you can talk yourself into things in the NFL. You got to play somebody. You got to play a good team in the playoffs. They got to be able to do something well. You can't play the Bears. You can't play the Texans. You got to. So of the grouping that you could have potentially had, and after seeing Tampa Bay, I might change my mind because that was such a bad football team. But how are they going to beat Dallas anyway? This is as good as you get in this particular position. So you got to take advantage of it. But Lane's not healthy. I mean, but to me, Jody, with Lane, look, if he can't go, he can't go. And then he's going to come out of the game and it's going to be Jack Driscoll. I think he'll be able to go. I think he'll finish. But yeah, he's not going to be 100%. He's having surgery after the season.
But I have, and I've said this all week, and nothing that's happened. If anything, I'm more emboldened in my stance. I think Lane Johnson's going to be Lane Johnson. If you get someone dropping in from Europe who didn't watch the Eagles play any of the games this year, any of Lane Johnson's previous years, and you just told them Lane Johnson's the best right tackle in football, keep an eye on him during the game, I think at the end of the game they go, oh yeah, I can see why he's the best right tackle in football. I expect Lane Johnson to play like Lane Johnson because he's that tough guy, and he will be properly medically taken care of before the game to make sure he's not in pain during the game. I'm not sweating the right tackle position. And another thing that I will, again, go out on a limb for, the Eagles will call their game with Lane Johnson's responsibilities being Lane Johnson's responsibilities. I don't think they will slide help or keep a back in or chip with a tight, because we need to protect Lane. No. Lane Johnson will be on Lane Johnson's island, and they will call the game exactly the way they do every single game. Now, we saw them make adjustment with Jalen Hurts when he was hurt. The last game of the season was an important win, but not a must win because they were already in the playoffs. They knew they were going in the playoffs. They could have lost that game and the season would have continued. This week, not so much. They lose, it's over. So I think the way that they look at play calling will differ from the game they played against the Giants 2 weeks ago to the one they're going to play on Sunday. Lane Johnson is not looked at this way. I think Lane Johnson is looked at.
No, I think the bigger concern from that perspective is, they don't help Jack Driscoll enough when he's in there, or Jordan Mailata, or Jordan Mailata early in the season when he hurt his shoulder. People forget they don't help their tackles. They don't help Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. They're on an island, and that's gives the Eagles a huge advantage over most offenses because most offenses can't do that. And my bigger criticism of the Eagles when Lane wasn't in there, you probably didn't give enough help to Jack Driscoll and expected him to do too much Lane Johnson stuff. Yeah, they're not helping Lane Johnson. Period. That doesn't even enter the conversation.
A phrase that was thrown around a lot in 2017 when the Eagles won the Super Bowl was next man up. They had a lot of guys come off the bench to fill in for injured players, and they treated them as next men up. You're expected to replace the guy you're expected to replace, and you're expected to do what he did. Maybe not to the exact same level, but close enough that we're not going to change things to cover up for the fact that there's a small drop-off in talent with the replacement player. This one isn't even a consideration. So those who are worried about Lane Johnson, I say don't worry. He will be perfectly fine. JM, I want to get this in before we get our first guest up here. Bob Groats is going to join us, Mr. Delco Times himself. Did you see the Eagle hype video?
I did, but I, went through it very quickly. Shall I say?
Do you like it's a Philly thing?
I do not like hype videos in general. I generally don't pay attention to them. I happened to be on Twitter when it popped up from the Eagles, so I looked at it. Um,
I think Johnny's
and
freezing
I
up on
gave
us.
it the look that it deserved. I don't. You
Okay,
got
so
me?
you're not a hype
Are
video
there?
guy.
Yeah, I'm not big. I'm not big of them. No, no, no.
Gotcha.
One of the things I saw the Giants. A lot of people have Giant clips. Uh, I have you, Jody. Do you have me?
Yeah, I'm good.
Um, a lot of people put clips of Giants practice out, and they were dancing around, and Daniel Jones was doing the gritty, and they were upset by that. I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, NFL players are competent. They're not gonna, general all of them. They don't get to this position without being competent in their abilities. They're not going to be shrinking violets. Oh, woe is us. We got to go into Philadelphia. They're going to try to win the game. Now, I don't think they're going to win the game. I don't think they have the talent to win the game, but that's sort of their mentality. I don't know why people get so hyped up about these videos, but people get so upset about the videos from the opponents. NFL players, man, they are confident people.
I agree with you on the Giants side, but I did like the Eagles hype video, and I think it's something that the fans can take in and get pumped up by. And you do want a home field advantage on Saturday. It's not like if they didn't put out a hype video, the people would go to the game and sit on their hands. I believe it's going to be a packed, loud, raucous
Yeah, they're going
stadium
to
no
be
matter
fine.
what.
They're going to be just fine.
But if you can move the needle even the littlest bit with a hype video, I think it's certainly well worth doing. And now we understand what It's a Philly thing was about on the swagwear leading up to the week. We didn't necessarily know ahead of time. The Eagles knew internally because they were going to put out this video, but now we understand the panderer in chief is playing.
Well, yeah, I always joke about Nick and his pandering, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't think it's going to help him win the game. I don't think it's going to help him lose a game. Eagles fans are going to show up anyway. I mean, they're going to be excited. They're going to, Eli Manning was joking about coming to the game, and he thought he'd never come to Philadelphia. This is a really, really difficult place to play. And that's another part of it, a really difficult place to play. And that doesn't go up or down because of some goopy hype video. It's always a really difficult place to play because the people are passionate about this football team. But it's fun, it's a social media thing. Yeah, knock yourself out.
Yeah, it's kind of an homage to the Eagle fans. They are that good. They've been that good. They travel that well and take it elsewhere. That's the thing that I liked about it more than anything else. The Sirianni clip of, hey, I'm getting the feeling we don't play a road game this year because the Eagle fans travel as well as they did. It's kind of a give back thing for the Eagles to their fans. So I appreciate it. I thought it was pretty damn well done. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, the Mac guys here on Birds 365. First up today, it's Mr. Positivity. Bob Groats from the Delco Times going to jump in and give us his upside. Oh, I think Groats, quick prediction out of you and I. Groats says they win or they lose. Which way are you going, Johnny Mac?
I'm going to say he says they win.
They win close or they win handily?
He's going to say they win close.
Okay.
He's going to say they win close. He's going to buy into the division rival 3-game nonsense. But ask him if he's going to get really hyped over that hype video.
He's a big hype video guy. You're right. I got to ask him about that. But Bob Groats of the Delco Times is going to be our first guest a little bit later. Pat Leonard give us a New York perspective. He covers the Giants for the New York Daily News. He'll be on in hour number 2. But the Darth Vader of Eagles beat reporters, Bob Groats, next here on